What I would like to do is to give you a little idea on how to plan your frame out, because most of the time you just can't make an arbitrary size frame. You have a particular size photo or a piece of artwork, whatever, that has to fit within the frame. And in this case, I have a 12-inch disc that I made up out of cherry. And this particular one, I kind of got the cart before the horse. And what I needed to do was to draw some reference lines on the outside. I have obviously some limitations on how deep I can cut, or the maximum width of that ring with the ringmaster, which is 1 1/4 inches. Being 12 inches, and I needed an 8-inch opening for my frame. So I then went ahead and I put a little plug back in the center so I could again find the center point, kind of sketch these circles out, knowing they won't be absolutely exact, but they'll be very, very close so I can come in and get right to the position that I need to. So I've gotten a 8-inch diameter circle, which is my opening, and then 1 1/4 inches wide. Around from there I have this larger circle, which will be the full diameter of my frame, the maximum cutting ability on the machine. So when you're doing this, you have to understand that the first thing you have to do is to cut this down to the point where we can actually get in and make that full thickness cut. The first thing I want to do, of course, is to bring the machine in and line it up so that my cutter is set exactly where I want it to be. Now again, I'll change my index pin system here a little bit, just so that I'll have a good constant reference point. Snug that down, and now we're ready to make our initial cut. So my first cut is going to be to take it down to the maximum diameter of my frame. Same situation. Now in this case, because I've got a large disc on here, I've slowed the machine down to give me a little bit more control. Cut in first from the left side. Back that cutter out, come back in now from the right side to complete my cut. Now when you're cutting straight in, when these rings come off, sometimes they'll come off, sometimes you can hear just as it's finished cutting. Suggest you stop the machine at that point and literally do a manual separation if you can. But if not, it'll just fall right off to the side, not a big deal. Pull our pin, get our head loosened up, and we're going to take this larger diameter ring, which we've cut off, to bring it down to size, and just set that aside. Okay, it would be most desirable, once we make that initial cut, would be to do some sanding around this outer perimeter and get as much of the roughness, especially at the cross grain points, off as we can. So we're just taking some 80 grit paper here, we'll turn the machine on, and we'll sand this. Now we're not interested in putting a contour on here, we're just mainly interested in sanding and get this as smooth as we possibly can. So it eliminates a lot of time sanding it after we take it off the machine. Okay, now we've got this pretty well smoothed out around the edge. We're now ready to go ahead and start to separate our actual frame right off of this panel. Again, we'll take this back in, and we want to go in so that we're just not quite rubbing. We're right along the edge of where we want to cut. We kind of find a center point here towards the outer edge of that circle. We'll lock this into place. And now we're going to actually separate the frame from this blank. Now you can see where I stopped there. I could just hear it start to stop the cutting. The frame is actually loose on this block. I'll center my blades, I'll pull this whole head back, and we're now ready to take the frame right off of there. This is our basic frame. We're now ready to proceed over to the router table, cut our rebate in the back, and then we'll do the shaping on the side. Set this down. Going to pull the blank off of here right now. Again, we're going to set this aside because we can utilize this, and this will make a nice, beautiful little cherry bowl, approximately 8 inches in diameter. Okay, we're back at the router table. As you can see, I've still got the other frame here where we did the rebate on the back, but we talked about doing the roundovers and what have you on the outer surface. Because I knew I was going to be making up moldable frames today, what I wanted to do was just go ahead and I'll cut this rebate into this one. Then we'll make the router bit changeover so we can actually cut the profile. Again, it's going to be the same situation. We have to come into this and we have to be able to follow this around and cut the inside. I'm going to come in a little bit closer and so you actually see the cutting take place a little bit better. All right, same situation. This is cut exactly the same way that the other one was. We want to get in here, we want to be able to get our foot switch situated where we can find it without any difficulty so we can turn the router on and off without having to remove our hands or have to look away. And we're going to do exactly the same type of cut on this one we did on the other one. All right, here we go. Again, that controlled plunge cut to get it in so that we're onto get the bearing up against the wood. We'll go ahead and finish the cut now. Okay, we've finished our cut. I've gotten some of the sawdust out of the way. Now pay attention to what you're doing. When this cut is done, it's always anxious to get rid of the sawdust. Make sure the router bed has come to a complete halt before you get in here and start moving that sawdust over to the intake. But basically, as you can see, our rebate is completely cut. The back of this frame is ready to go. And now we're ready to switch over. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over and I'm going to put a radius on the inside corners all the way around on both of the frames that we have done. Okay, what I've done is I've switched over to a 3/16 inch diameter roundover bit. The size is irrelevant. It doesn't really make a bit of difference. But what we want to do is examine the frame and decide where we want to actually do the radiuses. Obviously, we're going to want to do it on this side here on the inside and on this outer frame. I personally like to do it on the back so that way if the frame is going against a wall, it doesn't have to fit absolutely flush, and I think it makes for a little better balance, but it's a personal choice. It's entirely up to you. So what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the inner rings because those are the ones that are probably the trickiest. What we want to do is get this set up so that the bearing, we know that the bearing will come in and the bearing will hit against that wood, and we're just going to do a slight roundover. So here we go. And we have this roundover edge on the inside of our frame. Going to do the same thing on the other one. We'll just set this one aside, we'll bring the walnut frame back into play and do exactly the same cut. Now again, this doesn't have to be a roundover bit, it can be anything that you want it to be. But now that we've actually completed those cuts, now we can set this up in order to work a little safer. And we'll actually be able to move this fence back in because now we're going to be working against the outer perimeter of the bit. And we don't have to get on the inside. So consequently what I can do is move that out and I have a little bit more control here, and at this point I'm going to turn the vacuum on. We're going to let the vacuum do its job. Again, just hit it with the remote control, away we go. Not quite as messy this way. As you can see, we've now got the round over on the inside and the outside. And like I say, because I don't particularly like a frame that has to lay flat against a wall because many walls are textured, I like to put a little round over on the backside. Purely optional. After all, it's your frame. And now the basic frame is pretty well set. Set this one aside, get our cherry one. We'll do the outer diameters on those now. And we've completed the basic machining on these. What's left to do? Use a sander. I'll use a random orbital sander. We'll get everything sanded out smooth and it'll be ready to apply a finish. As with any other project, there's always a certain amount of hand sanding, especially on the inner portion of this ring. Has to be pretty well sanded out so that there's no flaws in there. Especially on your cross grain, try to get it out. Now, if you have a spindle sander, of course, a spindle sander will make it a little faster. But, you know, that's not something that's real common in anybody's shop unless they have a large need for it. So we just get in here and we just work it around with a hand sander. Again, it's the same situation. Just we want to get it as smooth and as perfect as we possibly can. All right, now we're looking at our finished frames. Walnut, by its very characteristic as a nice rich color, and what we've really done is just basically put a spray lacquer finish on this particular one here. It's all been sanded down, it's been sprayed, it's got several coats of lacquer on it. Makes for a very nice looking frame. Cherry, on the other hand, has a tendency, the raw cherry, the new cherry, it's pretty white wood, pretty nondescript, and what everybody really wants is that finish that looks like it's about cherry that's 40 to 50 years of age. Cherry will darken naturally, especially if it's in the sunshine. It'll darken even faster, but the problem there being that obviously a print inside of this frame, if it's exposed to sunshine, will fade. So in order to speed up the process, what we do is we apply a little bit of a stain. And cherry is a very difficult wood to stain properly. If you use a penetrating stain, it has a tendency to be very blotchy and it just doesn't come off real well. Most of us have trouble finishing cherry. One of the things that I've come up with here, and it works real well, I'm using a warm cherry polyurethane gel. And what this does is this allows me to put a surface finish on it by taking the gel and just spreading it on with a rag and smoothing it out and getting a nice even finish that I want. And this allows me to get the color that I'm looking for out of the cherry, so that it's got a nice rich color to it. Then after this is just a water-based stain. After it's dried for about 30 minutes, then I went over and I sprayed lacquer right over the top of it. And as you can see, it came out very nice. Picture frames with the Ringmaster are relatively simple. You get a very attractive product, has a nice shape to it, and it's not something that you can just go to the store and buy. If you can find them, they're usually very expensive. So it's a very nice project, and I think you'll have a lot of fun with it.